this thing was something that started in middle school, I guess. I mean, I was homeschooled, so all the grades kind of blur together. But around those middle school grades is when I started really dealing with this, because I wasn't smart, and so I hated all the smart people. And then I wasn't cool, so I hated all the cool people. And I wasn't attractive or clever or good-looking or talented or whatever else. And so I hated all the people who were. I was actually in a really small group. It was kind of just me that landed in all those categories. And it wasn't there was anything wrong with those people. It was just easier for me to hate them than to look in the mirror and accept that I'm not smart or good looking or talented or whatever else. It was my defense mechanism, if you will, because my natural inclination was to, I guess you could say, measure myself based on where other people were at, or what other people had, or what other people looked like, or what other people could do. I measured myself based on those things. But then I got a little older. I got into high school, and I got some breaks. Okay, I got some breaks. I figured out I had, my family has musical talent, so I can play some instruments with, adequacy. And I started growing in my body a little bit and looking a little less ridiculous. And I found out that I was pretty good at some sports. And so I would find every possible opportunity to show off anything that I could do. Anything I was good at, because it got me attention. Specifically, it got me attention from girls. But it got me attention, and suddenly I'm getting attention. Suddenly I'm a somebody, okay? I'm a freshman, sophomore year in high school, and suddenly I'm a somebody. But it was all about comparison. It was all about comparison, because the whole point was that I had to live up to what the people around me could do, or how the people around me looked, or what the people around me had. And then, that wasn't even enough eventually, because then I had to be not just equal with them, I had to be better. I had to be the best. I had to be the coolest and the best looking and the fastest and the most talented. And then as these things go, there's always a bigger fish. So someone would come along and they would be better looking or more talented, or they had more than I did, and so I would just hate them too. Some of you are more mature than that. Some of you don't hate the people you compete with. But it seems like, maybe it's just our world, or maybe it's just the culture we're in. Because so much of the time, we're always looking to the left and looking to the right to kind of find out how we're doing. Looking at the people around us to kind of see, am I acceptable? Am I measuring up to the standards set by the people around me? And it always ends up looking something like this. It always ends up looking something like this. We always want the bigger We always want the bigger attached to all the adjectives that describe us. We want to be richer and prettier and skinnier, hipper, taller, talented. We want to be all these things, but have on them over all the rest of the people around us. The title of this message today is Bigger, Faster, Stronger, because we always want more than everyone else. That's like, hey, I want more than you. And I like you and everything. But I just want to be able to, say we have lunch or coffee together. I want to be able to go home after that and say, yeah, they're fine. He's fine, but I'm I've got everything he's got, but added to the end of it. And then it gets bad, because then say I start dating, and then I want my girlfriend or boyfriend to have lots of too. I want them to have lots of so it reflects better on me. I want them to be richer or skinnier or successful. And then it carries over into marriage, of course, because things don't magically change. And we lie to ourselves. We say, I just want my husband or wife to reach their full potential. So we start trying to change them. We say, honey, you need a little more there. Babe, you could really use with a little less over there. You should change this, you should change that. And it's not even about them, is it? It's not even about them. It's about what people think about me, how that reflects on me. And then this goes with kids too, of course, as we saw in the video. You start hearing about where everyone else's kids go to school and what they're reading and how advanced they are. And my son skipped a grade. My son made varsity. And what they're doing, and we start trying to our kids. We start them too. And again, it's not even about our kids. It's not about our kids at all. It's about, we say, I want my kids to reach their full potential, which is fine. But really, that kind of thing is about comparing your kids to other kids. It's about really comparing yourself to other parents, comparing your parenting skills to other parents' parenting skills. And what's scary, and this is honestly really nasty, we won't admit this, but at some level we love it when other people's kids mess up. When they get into trouble, when they goof up, when they don't get the scholarship, when they don't make it into their school of choice. I mean, we don't say that. We would never say that because we're Christians, right? We hear it over the phone and we say, oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. What is that? That's honestly really messed up. It's messed up having a feeling of elation when something bad happens to someone else. That's gross. That's nasty. Have you ever wondered if there's sin in the world? You look at that feeling that shows up inside you when something bad happens to someone else and you feel good about it. It's twisted, and it's because we're obsessed with That is the reason. It's because we're obsessed with having more Then there's obviously the other side. The other side of were those people who we really do have more than them. We actually are, we have a little more Maybe they're a little heavier. They're a little poorer. They're nerdier. They're shorter. And then we have another problem. We start feeling superior, which, as we know, that results in a lot of issues. We've talked about pride a lot in this church. And so it's kind of a catch-22 because we look to the left and there's people who are better than us, and we look to the right and there's people who are not as good as us. We're somewhere in the middle. And anywhere we look, we compare. There's no winning. There's no winning with that. We're just constantly comparing ourselves to other people. How am I doing? Am I okay? Well, look, I'm better than this guy, but that guy's got way more than I do. But, well, hold on, wait a minute. I've got more financial stability than that guy, but wait a minute, I'm not as muscular as this guy over here. There's no winning. And so maybe, maybe you're on the other side of this completely. Maybe you don't hate the people who have more than you at all. You don't hate them at all. Maybe you look in the mirror and you see yourself and you say, you know what, it's not their fault that they're smarter. It's not their fault that they're more athletic. It's not their fault that their kids are more advanced. It's not their fault. Now, some of us look in the mirror and we hate ourselves. We hate ourselves because we look in the mirror and we say, you're never going to be as blank as them. You're never going to measure up. You're never going to be as happy as them. You're never going to have that kind of financial stability. You're never going to look like that. You're never going to drive that. You're never going to live like that. And so here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. If you take one thing from all this, if you don't come back for the rest of this series, if you're listening later online and your electricity goes out or something and you can't listen to the next message, here's what you need to know, okay? This is a crucial principle. It's taken from Scripture, and it's an extremely simple idea. Put it somewhere. You take this idea, you put it somewhere on a card, you put it on your dresser, you stick it on your mirror, and whenever you begin to veer to the left or veer to the right and start comparing yourself with other people, remember this. There's no win in comparison. There's no win in comparison. You guys say that with me? There's no win in comparison. There's no finish line. There's no final point of satisfaction where I've arrived. There's no finish line. If you're better, it doesn't help you. If you're worse, not as good as, you don't measure up, it doesn't help you. There's no win in comparison. And in fact, it's not just something that's a bother that there's no win in. It's actually a dangerous thing. I think some of us, if we're really honest, would say or could say that we have financial debt because of this. That we've purchased things, we're driving in things, we're wearing things, we live in things. And the only reason we did it was because we saw someone else who had that standard of living or drove that thing or wore that thing, and we had to reach that standard, and now we have debt. I mean, this is America we're describing here, guys. The American dream is to match up to your neighbor and exceed him. I've heard the statement once. I forget where this comes from, but somebody said, we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't like. And I think it should be like the USA, and then that should be in the subtitle. Some of us actually, it's a dangerous thing. Some of us don't get along with some of our relatives because they have more than we do. Because they have more, they're better off. They look better, they're more successful, their life is more together, and we don't get along with them because of that. Some of us we can find ourselves rejoicing in their failures, which is just nasty. This is not a casual thing. It's dangerous. The wisest man who ever lived, aside from Jesus, Solomon, he put it like this in Proverbs chapter 14. He said, "Envy rots the bones." Envy rots the bones. This is a dangerous thing. It's not something we can just set aside and ignore for a while. It's serious. So the question we're going to ask, the question we're going to wrestle with for the next few weeks is this: what do we do? What do we do about this? It seems like the vast majority of people I met, myself included, struggle with this. So what do we do? I found in my short life that the first place to look for questions like this is the Bible. And as it would have it, the Bible actually has some incredible things to say about this topic. So this week we're going to look at just a little bit. We're going to briefly look at what the Old Testament has to say about this issue. And specifically, we're going to be in the book of Ecclesiastes, which we don't go into too often, so this will be fun. We're going to be in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 4. Here's what the author says. He says, "And I saw that all the toil and all achievements spring from one person's envy of another." All the toil, all the achievements spring from one person's envy of another. This is some 3,000 years ago. And what did this guy see? He saw that people were determining where they were at based on what the people around them were at. They were determining how they were doing based on how the people around them were doing. And here's what he has to say about it. He says, "This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." You ever tried to chase the wind before? It's not something you can exactly grab hold of. You can't catch it, which is the point. There's no finish line. There's no finish line to living a life in which you find your worth and your value and your standard and your fulfillment in matching up to some standard set by other people. In comparing yourself to other people, there's no finish line. There's no sense of satisfaction. There's no peace. It's meaningless, he says. It's like chasing after the wind. And he doesn't leave it at this. The author is actually going to go on just a couple verses later, in verses 7 and 8. Here's what he says. "Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother." Now that's significant because in the Hebrew culture, 3,000 years ago, this meant that he had no one he could leave anything behind to. He had no one he could leave an inheritance to. He had no one he could leave anything to in the way of a will. In this culture 3,000 years ago, you couldn't leave things to wives or to women. This is the way it was a long, long time ago. So this guy, bottom line, what he's saying here is this guy has nothing, nobody he can leave anything to. He's alone on earth. He'll have no heritage, okay? And here's what he says. "There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth." There's no end to his toil. Here's a guy, he works and he works and he works and he works, but he's never content. Always more to do. There's always some other goal. There's always more to achieve. There's always more to get. He's never content. And the author of Ecclesiastes says, for this kind of person, this type of person, of which there are many of us out there, this type of person one day stops and asks a very important question. Here's what he asks. For who am I toiling? For who am I toiling? Why do I live like this? Why am I constantly looking to the left and the right and comparing and pursuing more and more? He says, for who am I toiling and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? Why am I depriving myself? Why is it I can't stop and enjoy the things that I spent all my effort and my life getting? What is it in me that says I have to keep going and getting more and more? He says, and I get this stuff that people have, and I achieve some standard that I set based on where other people are at. based on the people I see to my left and to my right, and there's no satisfaction. There's no finish line. Jim Carrey, a famous actor, he put it like this. He said, I wish everyone could get all the stuff they've ever wanted so that they could see it's not the answer. There's no finish line. No finish line with that. This guy says, look, what am I doing? Who am I doing this for? What is driving me exactly? And the author of Ecclesiastes say, it's simple. It's like I said earlier. It seems like it's almost human nature to keep looking and comparing and driving yourself forward to meet some standard you set for yourself based on the people you see around you. And the author of Ecclesiastes is going to finish up with a pretty powerful statement. He's going to say this: this too is meaningless, a miserable business. It's miserable. It's miserable. As long as you are trying to constantly meet some standard set by the people around you, as long as you're trying to compare what you have to others, as long as you are trying to meet this kind of standard, it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter what you get. It doesn't matter what you achieve. It doesn't matter what your kids do. It's never going to be enough. As long as you have a mindset like this, your life is going to be a miserable business. You're never going to be able to enjoy your life. Because, bottom line, there's no win in comparison. There's no win in comparison. What if we learned to catch ourselves? To catch ourselves when we start comparing ourselves to other people. To catch ourselves and stop. What if we learned to live like that in our pursuits? And what if we learned to live like that in our family? What if we just got the hang of catching ourselves and stopping ourselves before we started comparing ourselves to other people? Because you know what's interesting? In the end, all of us, every single one of us, is using something or someone as a mirror. All of us is looking somewhere to determine how we're doing, to determine if we're okay. We're looking at something to tell us that. And so the big question is this. Here's a really big question. We all have an answer to this deep down. But here's the big question. What or who am I going to use as my reference point to tell me that I'm okay? What or who am I going to use as my reference point to tell me that I'm doing fine? You know what I've learned? I've seen this quite a lot. I've met a whole lot of older people who are incredibly successful, and I met a lot of younger people who are incredibly successful. And I've met older people with wonderful families, and I've met young people with wonderful families. And no matter how old or young or great or not great or whatever, there's something in all of us that is looking somewhere for something or someone to tell us, you're okay. You're okay. You're doing fine. You're right where you need to be. You don't need to do any more. You don't need to do any less. You're fine. So the question I want to leave us this morning is this. Where are you looking? Where are you looking for your reference point? Is it your dad? Your family? Is it dollars? Is it your boss? The industry you work in? Your spouse? Your neighbors? Your coworkers? The people at your church? Where are you looking to tell you that you're okay? Because the author of Ecclesiastes says, you know what? Be very careful. Be very careful, because if you allow yourselves to look at those around you to see if you're okay, you're never going to be able to enjoy your life. It's going to be a miserable business. You're going to live out a miserable existence no matter what you achieve, no matter what you get, no matter what your family achieves. You're chasing after the wind. Chasing after the wind. So in the next 2 weeks, we're going to be looking into this question. We're going to be diving into the question, where should my mirror be? Where should my mirror be? Where should I look for that? You know, I'm the I'm the master of self-deception. I'm the master of hearing a good principle or good idea and convincing myself somehow that I don't deal with it when it is pervasive in my life. So I'd really encourage you guys to not allow yourselves to be self-deceivers this morning. To look honestly and earnestly at your heart and your life. Say, am I chasing after the wind? Am I basing my worth and my value and my standard? Am I pursuing things for the sake of matching up, measuring up? Let's look at our lives and let's see if that's the case. And then, you know what? Together in the next couple weeks, let's quit it. Let's knock it off. Let's quit chasing the wind. That's silly. It's a waste of time. And I don't want to waste my time anymore. I don't want you guys to waste your time anymore. And God doesn't want us to waste our time anymore. We've got things that are much more worth pursuing than matching up to some arbitrary standard set by the society around us. Because here's what we know. There's no win in comparison. There's no win in comparison. We're going to pick this up next week. Don't miss it. Don't be late. We're going to have the band come up here as we begin to wrap up. But I encourage you guys, together with me, let's push forward in this. And if there's a solution, man, is it worth going after. So, Father, thank you so much that you've given us scriptures that are so insightful and point out the issues that mankind has dealt with and continues to deal with for thousands of years. You point out the issues that we don't see in ourselves and manage to glaze over. Father, I pray that for us this morning, that you would put before us exactly the way we work and way we do things. And if we are people who walk in comparing ourselves to others, I pray you'd make that clear to us. And you'd show us that it's not something that can continue. Father, I pray as we go about our week, as we leave here, I pray you would ingrain in our minds that there is no win in comparison. And the next time we try to look to our left and our right to see how we're doing based on how others are doing around us, Father, I pray you'd help us to catch ourselves and to stop. We love you, Lord.